March 1918. Lothar von Richthofen held the elite status of Germany's premier fighter ace. He was the brother of the Red Baron, yet his sudden mutilation came from an ordinary obstacle, a stationary cable. How did an elite pilot become the victim, not of enemy fire, but of his own blind machine? The mechanical reality offered no margins for error. The damaged Fokker triplane lost altitude. It struck the power grid. A metallic crack of snapping high-voltage wires pierced the air. Heavy cables sheared straight through the fabric wings. The internal wooden frame deformed instantly upon impact. Kinetic energy violently threw the pilot forward into the unyielding instrument panel. The physiological trauma was massive. The collision crushed his jaw. His nose splintered. His leg snapped under the shifting engine weight. Early aeronautics provided absolutely zero structural protection for the frail human body. Lothar survived this extreme kinetic transfer. Most did not. The war required constant replacements. Imperial flight schools rushed recruits through rudimentary instruction. Novices frequently deployed to the active sectors with merely 15 hours of total flight time. These unprepared youths faced lethal physics daily. The average life expectancy of a hastily trained pilot at the front collapsed to just 3 weeks. This mathematical certainty turned early military aviation into a statistical meat grinder. The primary cause of death was rarely an enemy bullet. The supreme threat remained the primitive, highly unstable flying machine itself. Following extensive facial reconstruction and months of clinical rehabilitation, Lothar von Richthofen returned to active flight duty at the front. In 1914, 4 years before Richthofen's fall, the Wright brothers' invention was just 11 years old. Military command immediately weaponized the fragile technology. Ground crews tethered observation balloons as static platforms. The system turned human observers into immobile targets. A wicker basket creaked. It swayed hundreds of meters above the crater-pitted Earth. Escape was impossible. Survival depended entirely on ground batteries. Anti-aircraft artillery and heavy machine guns ringed the tethering winch. Senior generals viewed this integration with profound skepticism. Forcing highly vulnerable equipment into a brutal trench deadlock contradicted established doctrine. The concept seemed absurd. Yet the tactical stalemate demanded immediate reconnaissance. Only 3 empires maintained formal air forces at the conflict's onset. France and Russia operated primitive airplanes. Germany fielded massive zeppelins and deployed the observation balloons. Airborne spotters calculated grid coordinates and corrected heavy artillery fire onto the opposing trenches, while tethered German platforms directed artillery. The mobility of primitive aircraft secured the survival of 100,000 British soldiers. How could one unarmed flight prevent the annihilation of an entire army? August of 1914. The Battle of Mons. The British Expeditionary Force faced Alexander von Kluck's First Army. They avoided total destruction exclusively because of one aerial report. The primitive engine roar was deafening. It made voice communication impossible. The crew worked in absolute isolation. The pilot maintained visual contact with the German encirclement maneuver. He tracked the advancing infantry. The observer marked the exact grid coordinates on a paper map. He dropped the weighted note directly to the ground commanders. 100,000 lives depending on the visual contact of one unarmed crew. Ground officers read the coordinates. They found the German weak point. They ordered an immediate tactical retreat. The intelligence broke the encirclement plan. Abstract military theories dissolved. The visual acuity of a single observer determined the survival of entire divisions. The strategic value of this data shifted the battlefield reality. Unarmed observation crews exposed enemy positions with absolute precision. General staffs recognized the new threat. They ordered their immediate destruction. Reconnaissance became a death sentence. The successful reconnaissance that saved the British Corps occurred in open cockpits. Their maximum velocity reached 60 miles per hour. This limitation made the aircraft slower than several pre-war racing automobiles, which effectively turned them into hovering targets. Pilots faced absolute spatial disorientation. Navigation instruments did not exist. Early aviators relied strictly on human vision. A pilot located enemy formations. He then landed the machine in any available field. He delivered verbal reports directly to ground officers, but this procedural delay compromised the tactical data. Military engineers eventually mounted the first aerial cameras to the airframes. Photographic evidence replaced human memory, and the strategic value of these flights multiplied exponentially. Yet the machines remained entirely unarmed. Command authorized observation. They provided no defensive weaponry. The primitive technology generated profound psychological terror. Hostile fire constituted a secondary hazard. Without compasses, air crews lost their coordinates instantly. Pilots initiated dangerous descents over civilian infrastructure. They dropped altitude simply to read the painted signs on railway stations, exposing the fragile airframes to unpredictable crosswinds. Engines stalled mid-flight without warning. The death toll of pilots killed exclusively by the mechanical failures of their own engines numbered in the hundreds. Early visual contacts between opposing scouts retained remnants of civility, with pilots exchanging welcoming hand gestures. Yet this brief courtesy soon devolved into intentional, fatal rammings, like the one executed by Russian pilot Pyotr Nesterov. The logic of total war demanded immediate results. Command staffs realized that a returning observer guaranteed accurate artillery strikes on their infantry. Directives shifted from passive observation to absolute elimination. How do you eliminate an enemy scout without stationary weapons? Crews deployed portable solutions directly from the cockpit. Aviators threw stones. They dropped hand grenades. Some pilots even hoisted heavy naval grappling hooks into the airstream, attempting to physically snag the wings of passing targets. Every attempt failed. The enemy simply maneuvered away. The tactical pressure mounted. Before the new interception orders, a reconnaissance pilot routinely survived for several months in a combat zone. After the strict directives, that average lifespan plummeted to a mere few weeks. Command policies forced pilots into an inescapable position. Fulfilling the mission now required absolute suicidal measures. In September of 1914, Nesterov demonstrated the ultimate cost of this transition. He intercepted an Austrian reconnaissance plane. He abandoned portable weapons. The aircraft fuselages closed in at maximum throttle. Nesterov drove his machine directly into the enemy structure. A severe physical strike shattered the Austrian tail section. The high-speed impact produced a sharp crack of splintering wooden struts and tearing canvas. Both airframes lost structural integrity instantly. Heavy debris from the shattered machines plunged toward the ground. The very first tactical aerial kill resulted in the total destruction of both crews. Nesterov's fatal impact proved the absolute inefficiency of aerial ramming. Mutual destruction offered no strategic advantage. The failure forced aviators to seek alternatives. French pilot Louis Canol hauled an infantry machine gun directly into the cockpit. Initial trials with service pistols and rifles yielded zero results. Moving targets and extreme winds rendered hand weapons useless. Engineers then mounted heavy machine guns in the rear section of two-seater aircraft. The passenger operated the weapon. On paper, it solved the defense problem. In reality, human biomechanics failed to match the machine. To execute fire from the rear hemisphere, the gunner had to stand full height. He exposed his body in the open cockpit. An icy slipstream battered his torso at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Muscle control degraded. Overcoming that immense aerodynamic pressure to stabilize a heavy weapon barrel was physiologically impossible. The tactical geometry also collapsed. Aiming a weapon backward or sideways while actively flying forward to pursue an enemy defied basic combat logic. Survival dictated a shift to frontal engagement. Pilots required a fixed, forward-firing machine gun. To execute a precise strike, The aviator gripped the control stick and violently swung the entire aircraft fuselage to track his target. Louis Quinault and his colleagues attempted to project firepower forward. A fundamental physical barrier blocked their line of sight. The spinning propeller disc rotated directly in front of the pilot's face. Placing a weapon on the nose guaranteed one outcome. The aviator would fire point-blank into his own wooden blades. Designers immediately shifted the armament to the wings, entirely outside the propeller arc. What happens when a weapon jams out of the pilot's reach? The firing sequence halted instantly. A sharp metallic click of a locked bolt echoed over the engine noise. The aviator could not physically extend his arm to clear the mechanism. The pilot remained defenseless. Aiming an offset weapon also required violent lateral maneuvers. Wing-mounted weapon arrays would eventually become the definitive global standard during the Second World War, alongside high-capacity engines. But early airframes lacked this structural power. The extra mass warped the fragile wooden structures. Engineers tested another workaround. They developed pusher designs. Technicians relocated the engine and propeller behind the cockpit. The forward view cleared. Yet the aerodynamic penalty proved severe. Rear-mounted engines disrupted the center of gravity. Balance vanished. Speed dropped drastically. These machines failed to intercept fast enemy targets. Every engineering compromise catastrophically degraded the aircraft's combat viability. The optimal firing position remained the nose. No safe solution existed. While design bureaus developed structurally deficient rear-engine models, French pilot Roland Garros adopted a fatalistic alternative. He elected to fire a forward-facing machine gun directly through the rotation arc of his own propeller. The modification lacked basic engineering logic. Mechanics hastily bolted heavy steel deflector plates directly onto the fragile wooden blades. What is the strategic price of a single failed ricochet? The operational data from April 1915 provided the answer. Garros fired his weapon in short bursts. The physics remained violently unstable. Muzzle velocity met rotational force. Standard lead rounds exited the barrel. A defined percentage struck the spinning metal plates. The entire wooden airframe absorbed harsh, continuous vibrations from the impacts of its own deflected ammunition. The pilot operated inside a constant mechanical concussion. Statistically, the improvisation functioned. Garros secured initial aerial victories, but material fatigue accumulated rapidly. During a combat engagement, the probability curve inverted. Garros initiated a standard machine gun burst. Lead struck the spinning deflector at a critical angle. A bullet ricocheted backward. The projectile penetrated the engine block. The motor failed instantly. Garros executed a forced landing behind the German front line. He desperately attempted to incinerate his downed aircraft. He failed. This individual risk triggered a strategic catastrophe for the Allies. German infantry secured the intact Morane-Saulnier airframe. The captured hardware provided a fully functional prototype. It instantly saved the opposing forces months of blind conceptual research. A localized gamble permanently shifted the geopolitical balance in the sky. Logistics units extracted the physical evidence. German command delivered the technology to Dutch engineer Anthony Fokker. They transferred the future of aerial supremacy into the hands of exactly one engineer. In the spring of 1915, one engineer erased the final barrier between the pilot and the machine gun. The aircraft ceased to be an observation tool. It became a specialized platform for liquidation. How did engineering overcome a physical barrier? Fokker mechanically linked the weapon's trigger to the rotation of the engine shaft. A single steel rod formed the core of the Stangensteuerung system. It directly connected the spinning engine mass to the firing mechanism. The process operated with flawless mechanical precision. The wooden propeller blade swept directly in front of the muzzle. A sharp metallic click of the interrupter snapped in sync with the engine RPM. The rod physically blocked the trigger sear. The blade passed. The gap opened. The machine gun instantly resumed fire. This mechanism allowed the pilot to project 400 rounds per minute strictly along the flight vector. The aviator simply aimed the entire airframe at the target. This mathematical precision systematically nullified the enemy's chances of survival. Human operators in opposing aircraft had no defense against concentrated frontal fire. Casualties escalated immediately. The German military rapidly integrated this technology into the Fokker monoplane. The strategic balance collapsed. The Allies deployed nothing capable of countering a synchronized forward-firing weapon. German aviators established absolute operational control over the Western Front. Allied command officially classified this period of total airspace domination as the Fokker Scourge. The German military lost its monopoly on the Stangensteuerung system the moment Allied infantry captured a downed aircraft. An operational monoplane landed behind the trenches. Soldiers secured the airframe. The synchronization gear remained intact. British engineers dismantled the linkage connecting the engine shaft to the trigger. French aviation specialists analyzed the internal timing mechanism. The complete reverse engineering procedure required only a few months. The structural advantage vanished. Within a single season, the synchronized firing technology bypassed theoretical testing and became standard equipment across both coalitions. The copied schematics established a strict point of no return. Captured technology instantly multiplied the volume of human casualties across the Western Front. Aerial combat transitioned into standardized industrial execution. Survival required lethal parity. Aviation factories installed forward-firing machine guns on all new types of fighters. 80 victories made Manfred von Richthofen the ultimate military asset. The press titled him the Red Baron, a bright red fuselage against a gray sky. State propaganda manufactured a narrative of airborne chivalry. The operational reality meant eliminating infantry from low altitudes. Twin machine guns on British and French fighters escalated daily casualties. General staffs required an ideological screen. They needed to mask mounting losses. Combat operations contradicted the romanticized duels. Pilots executed systematic ground attacks. The aircraft descends over the front line. The aviator opens fire from twin machine guns. Surviving infantrymen answer with desperate rifle volleys. Training programs compressed tactical maneuvers. Instructors taught recruits to dive, climb, and turn. The goal was absolute destruction. Military commands artificially engineered the ace status. Headquarters established a strict metric. 5 confirmed victories granted the title. This label operated as a calculated psychological tool. It personalized the war. It diverted civilian attention from the trenches, while millions of anonymous conscripts perished in the artillery barrages of the Somme. Newspapers printed pristine portraits of aviators. The state transformed industrial murder into an individual sport. The propaganda machine functioned flawlessly until his death in 1918. 80 confirmed liquidations on the account of one pilot. Behind the media facade of those 80 victories lay a strict physiological reality. Aviators operated highly combustible airframes constructed of fragile wood and percale. What occurred upon the perforation of the forward fuel tank? Pilots selected a bullet from their standard-issue pistol to avoid burning alive. Flight crews documented multiple mid-air suicides. Men jumped from burning cockpits without survival gear. Engineering defects dictated the casualty rates. Designers positioned the primary aviation fuel tank directly in front of the pilot. A single incendiary round ignited the entire structure. Rotary engine mechanics compounded this physical trauma. Hot castor oil sprayed continuously into the aviator's face during flight. Vision blurred. The open cockpit exposed crews to sub-zero thermal drops. Combat altitudes exceeded 15,000 feet. Hypoxia severely degraded cognitive functions. High command omitted escape protocols intentionally. Generals prohibited parachute distribution for years. Military doctrine stipulated that the absolute absence of rescue equipment enforced a more aggressive combat behavior among flight crews. When the General Staff eventually authorized emergency silk canopies, the mechanisms failed consistently. 60%. That was the maximum probability of a successful deployment. Close-quarters aerial combat produced acute psychological trauma. A French aviator initiated his landing sequence. He manually cut the engine ignition to decelerate the aircraft. The biplane rolled to a complete halt. The pilot removed his leather flying goggles. Arterial blood of an enemy combatant coated the glass lenses and the forward fuselage. The kill occurred at point-blank range. Military analysts systematically cataloged these physiological breakdowns and equipment failures. General staffs integrated these exact casualty metrics into the official interwar aviation doctrines.